Story 1. Had a friend in town for a weekend whose hotel reservations fell through. I let them stay at my house for free because we were friends. They got settled in, we fed them dinner, and after we cleaned up and mentioned getting ready for bed, they dropped a bomb. They were completely flabbergasted and under the impression that we would be leaving our house to them for the entire weekend. They demanded that we leave because they already had plans for guests to come over. I thought it was a joke at first until they assured me that it was okay that I could not sleep in my own house because at least I would be able to come over and cook meals for them during their mealtime. Some people. I was younger and weaker, so I let them stay the night, but the next morning, I put my foot down and told them they had to be out by noon. Believe me, I made their brief stay very uncomfortable. I locked the thermostat, played my music at the volume I wanted, and cooked for myself only. The friendship ended there, and months later, I received texts from them upset about my betrayal and abandonment. This is not an Airbnb. Story 2. An old coworker and friend who was down on their luck needed a place to stay for a few weeks before their first paycheck from their new job. We had an extra room and let her stay with us as she got back on her feet. While we were out grocery shopping, she completely rearranged our kitchen without asking and, in the process, broke a family heirloom and our Instant Pot. This same person was cat sitting for us after we got married, and when we returned, we found cat feces smeared all over one of our couches. Needless to say, she is no longer in our lives. Good riddance. Also, if you ever do a kindness like inviting someone into your home, do so with a firm end date in mind. Story 3. We invited my husband's coworker to go to the bar and dance salsa. She got so drunk she couldn't even get in the car to go home. We put her on our couch with a blanket and took off her shoes, planning to make her breakfast in the morning. I woke up to find her gone. She had soaked the couch in urine and vomit. We had to get rid of it. She also stole my phone, wallet, truck keys, 2 sweaters, all the money from my husband's wallet, and my husband's work identification badge. Since she had my phone, we tracked it and went to her house. We threatened to call the police if she didn't return our belongings. We got everything back except our couch. Story 4. Ex urinated in my mother's vacuum cleaner. I did not know until my mother went to use it, and the vacuum cleaner leaked urine everywhere. I made him buy a new one. Story 5. My son cut all of his sister's hair with scissors, giving her a full pixie cut. The pixie cut was uneven with some bald spots. She had hair down to her waist. Then he gave himself the best haircut he ever had, before or since. His sister cried for about a week. Story 6. Not my house, but my sister's house. A drunk driver drove straight through the living room and killed a baby. The previous family grieved deeply, renovated the house, and sold it to my sister. She lives in a corner house next to a busy street and was informed of the event before she bought the house and moved in. Story 7. Got me arrested and then changed all the locks. Got out. Came home to find her sitting on the couch with a man smoking marijuana and using cocaine. Called the police, had them arrested, changed the locks, and filed for divorce the next day. Story 8. I came home from my shift as a nurse one night and found my teenage son unresponsive on the floor of his room after trying to take his life. Nothing can prepare you for finding your own child like that. Today, he is thriving. It is amazing what a proper diagnosis and the correct medications can do. I had no idea he was even struggling. Always check on your people. Ask the hard questions. Can save a life. Story 9. My ex-husband flipped out in a drunken, drug-induced rage, assaulted my daughter by pushing her in the throat as she tried to defend me. He stormed out of the house, got into his work truck, and quickly left the driveway, hitting the neighbor's van and stalling his truck. Then he restarted it and took off, trying to hide at a nearby park. I called the police and he was found shortly after, about a mile from the house. He was arrested for driving under the influence, domestic assault, and hit and run. He lost both of his jobs, ended up in jail for 5 days, and was homeless for a year. I filed for divorce the next morning, and we have a 5-year restraining order against him. Story 10. My brother once ate my last sleeve of Thin Mints without asking. He didn't even tell me. I went to find them after he left, and that's when I realized. Story 11. used drugs, badly burned a sleeping bag and the book I loaned him, nearly started an electrical fire, then lied about it. Story 12. My roommate accidentally burned it down with a candle in his bedroom. The entire house had to be gutted to the studs and redone. I was displaced for over a year. Story 13. A drunk man urinated on my carpet in college. That same night, another man exposed himself and struck a girl's hand with his genitals. Story 14. Grandmother's friend defecated everywhere in the bathroom. Not just on the seat, but also on the floor, up the wall behind the toilet, and smeared on the sink everywhere. She did not say a word. She just walked back to the living room, told my grandmother it was time to go, that she had errands to run and it was getting late. My mother cried for 2 days. Story 15. My girlfriend's sister and her girlfriend came and stayed with us for a while. We did not want money, just asked that they clean up after themselves. We both worked night shifts. One day, I woke up feeling strange. Her girlfriend was standing at the foot of the bed watching us. When I asked what was going on, she asked if she could vacuum. I said no, we were sleeping. She turned and walked away. Story 16. Vomited in my kitchen sink and then left it there. Clogged the sink, so I had to put on rubber gloves and scoop it out. Story 17. My significant other and I just moved into a new home a few months ago, so nothing bad has happened here, thankfully. Our last home was a nightmare situation. Our housemate, my boyfriend's best friend for many years, was stealing from us, particularly from my boyfriend. He was stealing expensive liquor. We set up cameras to prove it. He was an absolute disgrace. The most ironic part is that he was a weekly churchgoer who preached about sinning and condemned others, yet he actively cheated on his girlfriend with his ex-wife. The irony of pointing out sinners when you are the worst offender is striking. We are glad to be rid of him. Story 18. Caused a fire. I had a housemate who fell asleep while cooking dinner on the grill. I received a phone call at work informing me of what had happened and that my house was severely damaged. I had only been living there a few months. Thankfully, my insurance covered a lot of the damage, but the fear of my cats dying is irreparable. Roger, the lodger, was evicted immediately. Story 19. Had an old friend and his wife stay. Rule number 1 was to go out on the deck if you wanted to smoke. No, too lazy. Smoked in bed and used one of our plates as an ashtray. It took 20 years to get the cigarette smell out of that room. Vacuuming was not enough. Rented a carpet cleaner. Washed the windows. Story 20. I broke up with an ex once and told him I would give him a couple of months to find a place to live. I was not trying to be cruel and just kick him out on the streets. At the time, I worked the night shift, so I would try to go to bed around 7 to 7:30 a.m. most days to sleep before my next shift that evening. He would sit outside my bedroom and knock repeatedly, begging to talk to me and not letting me sleep. I would ignore him and make sure the door was locked. He did that every single day for an hour until he finally had to leave for work, and I could finally get to sleep. It got to the point where it felt like Chinese water torture because he was not pounding on my door. It was these small, repetitive knocks with quiet "hey" and "please." It felt like he was a mindless non-player character. It was not necessarily the most traumatic thing, as I am sure other people have experienced horrible things in their homes, but it felt insane and nearly drove me insane. After about a month of this, I changed the locks on my house one day while he was at work and set his belongings in the driveway. I blocked him and never spoke to him again. Story 21. Our cat's litter box was next to our guest bathroom. We had an aunt staying at our house when she came to town for a wedding. She had a headache, so I told her there was Tylenol and aspirin in the bathroom cabinet. Instead of telling us she couldn't reach them, she dumped our cat's litter all over the hall and bathroom floor and turned the box over, thinking she could use it as a step stool. When she stood on it, it buckled. We had a hard time cleaning up the mess and had to send my husband to the store to get a new litter box and step stool. Story 22. Just a couple of days ago, I had an engineer over. He did not take off his boots when entering, even though it was raining outside. He smelled unpleasant, and he used the toilet without asking first. Story 23. My husband was with his sister-in-law in my living room while I was in the hospital having our first baby. Story 24. Not my house, but the apartment complex I lived in. A neighbor used to rule it with an iron fist of fear, drunkenness, arrogance, and sadism when he couldn't get his way. I knew a man I will call Chebby because, frankly, his real name does not deserve to be uttered. Warning: this is not a funny neighbor story. This is a chilling account of someone who is, without a doubt, depraved and possibly even sadistic. Chebby lived in my apartment complex. For months, his behavior was a constant source of terror, including loud, drunken arguments spilled out into the hallways at all hours, often involving unsavory characters he brought back to his apartment. The police were called numerous times, and I witnessed screaming matches, threats, and vulgar language toward anyone who crossed his path, including his own parents. He was physically intimidating, and the sheer evil in his eyes when he was angry was terrifying. I even saw him try to fight a police officer once, an act of unbelievable arrogance and stupidity. His anger was not just directed at strangers. Stories I heard about his treatment of his ex-girlfriend were horrifying, painting a picture of a controlling, abusive monster. It is no surprise he is now in prison for domestic violence against her. Frankly, I am surprised it did not happen sooner. Story 25. A friend passed away on my couch. An ex-friend kicked my cat. My now ex-fiancé brought a man over and slept with him in our bed. Story 26. Moved in, brought drugs into the house, got me on drugs and sold drugs from my house. That was my sister. I kicked her out and sent myself to rehabilitation. I have been sober for 4 years. Story 27. Fantasy draft participant uses the guest bathroom, comes out quickly, gathers his things, and says to his ride, "We have to go." The next person who enters the bathroom immediately comes out and says, "You have a bathroom problem." The toilet had backed up because the first person had used it heavily. The toilet had to be plunged to clear the dirty water. That was the last year we held the fantasy football draft at my house. Story 28. A girl overdosed in my room. I administered naloxone and gave her CPR, literally saving her life while her boyfriend panicked and left. Later that night, her boyfriend stole $30, a scale, and a screwdriver set from me. Story 29. I live in a mother-in-law house on the property of a relative. My cousins came down for Christmas and got drunk around 10 a.m. on Christmas Eve. I got ready for midnight mass and left the house around 8 p.m. because I was volunteering at the church before mass. The mass ended around 2:30 a.m. There was a hot cocoa social in the courtyard that lasted until a little after 3 a.m. I got home around 3:30 a.m. to find my drunk cousins had somehow gotten into my house. I suspect they had a key from when they used to live in it. They were very drunk and having a silly debate at my small kitchen table where they had shoved the nativity set aside and placed their empty beer cans on and around it. My cousin said, "Oh, sorry about your action figures," in a mocking tone. He is atheist. When I started clearing the beer cans, I told them to leave because I was going to get up early to begin Christmas dinner, turkey and most of the fixings, because no one else knows how to cook well. I wanted to sleep without 2 drunk people yelling at each other in my house. They left, but not before one threw up in my sink. Now I go to other people's houses for Christmas. I am tired of attending beautiful, transcendent church services on major holidays only to come home to the mood killer that I call my family. Story 30. Showed up on the first day my house was on the market with a real estate agent as scheduled, toured the house, and pocketed valuables. Then I realized my hoodie and the Blowfish tickets were missing. I did not notice that particular item missing until I was ready to leave for the concert weeks later. Story 31. Steal money. Another time, someone opened my closet, urinated on my suede boots, and then blamed my 6-pound dog for it, even though the urine reached items 3 feet high. Story 32. Theft. Twice. The first time was my niece's irresponsible and unreliable father. The second time was my untrustworthy friend. He paid me back, but the damage was done. Story 33. I really don't have anything good, but I have this. When I was a kid, I had a friend over, and he accidentally broke the handle to the bathroom sink off. Unbeknownst to me, He took it upon himself to use toothpaste to secure the handle back on. Maybe a week or two later, my dad was losing his mind, saying how lazy it was that I used toothpaste to fix the sink instead of telling someone. I was like, what? I had no idea what he was talking about, and he absolutely thought I was lying. I remember venting to my friend about it, and he was like, oh yeah, that was me. Like, thanks for the heads up. Story 34. An artist manager we had worked with a lot asked to stay for a night as one of her artists was just finishing his move to Los Angeles, and then she would stay with him. She showed up acting weird, with all kinds of stories of abuse and mistreatment at the hands of other friends of ours. Then boxes and boxes of stuff started showing up. As this was happening, she was acting totally irrational, breaking things in the street, got into a fight with whoever was dropping the stuff off, and was threatening self-harm. After nearly having the police called on her by neighbors, she came in but refused to discuss any of it. We told her she needed to leave the next day because this was terrible behavior that could get us evicted, and we had another friend coming to stay in the morning. She agreed, but when he actually arrived, she still wouldn't budge. She literally barricaded herself in the guest room, screaming at us, moving furniture in front of the door, the whole 9 yards. We started going through her boxes and found out she was trying to commit identity theft on the very wealthy friend whose house she had previously stayed at, the one she was claiming had abused her. We found checkbooks belonging to the friend, bills to prove residence and identification, an old driver's license, and random binders of financial information among many other things. She slunk out with a backpack and got on the bus. She called me the next day begging me to bring her belongings to a single-room occupancy hotel. The police and Federal Bureau of Investigation had already been notified. Not sure exactly what happened next, as we were glad to be free of her. To be clear, besides trying to be helpful as a favor to her artist who was on my record label, which was the only good reason we agreed to let her stay for one night, I had stayed with her once for a night in Miami. When I arrived at her place, I was very confused as the apartment reeked of mold and mildew, and I immediately started to feel sick. She explained that when she moved in years earlier, she had taken a Xanax one night and fallen asleep with the tub running, so the whole house flooded 6 inches deep, which caused a black and blue line of mold and mildew around the entire apartment. She didn't want management to see it, so she had never cleaned it. I went to use the bathroom. She had no toilet paper. She claimed she just showered every time she used the bathroom after a bowel movement, but not after urinating. There was no food, no car, no clean towels, no sheets, and no soap. Literally nothing. She made some excuse about being out of town and not having a chance to go to the store. She only had makeup and a bottle of Valtrex, claiming the musician Diplo had slept with her at 15 and given her herpes simplex virus. But that was also how she was affording this place, because he owed her. A few years later, I discovered she had changed her name and reinvented herself as a high-fashion and artist photographer. A first-rate scammer. Story 35. Got very drunk after I asked them to slow down or stop drinking, and then passed out in my bed. I went upstairs to go to sleep and had to get the other boys to move him from my room to the guest room. When he got up, there was a giant wet spot. It was urine. He urinated in my bed. Story 36. A close friend of my former roommate came to my room while I was sleeping. He was naked and rubbed his body against my back, then tried to enter my bathroom when I woke up and hurried inside. Some events occurred afterward, but they are not important. I was very frightened, and my best friend was initially upset with me when I told her he needed to leave. Story 37. We live in a flat, and after 8:30 p.m., we are asked to lock the house door. My husband brought some friends to the door and left it open for them. They thought it was a good idea to leave our flat door open, perhaps so he wouldn't have to lock it again, while we have 2 curious cats. I was already in bed and jumped out when I heard a heartbreaking, echoing meow that sounded like one of our cats, but not anywhere inside our flat. Of course, she had left the flat, gone down 2 flights of stairs, gotten scared, and hidden under an earth cabinet. It took forever to get her out because I couldn't reach her in the small space. I was very mad. Even though no one got hurt, it is now mandatory that my husband leaves last and closes the flat door. Story 38. Made popcorn in a pan. Then I took the hot pan with popcorn in it and set it on the carpet to eat from it. When I went to pick up the pan, It melted onto the carpet. I had to rip it off and get new carpet. Story 39. Racked up $800 in sex line calls on our phone bill after bailing him out of jail and letting him stay at our house for the night. We had to go to small claims court to recover the money. He refused to pay, so it was taken from his tax return, which made him angry. Joke's on him. 10 years later, he called begging us to take down a post we had made about him after the incident. He was still having a hard time getting jobs because that post was the second result when you searched his name. Several prospective employers had asked specifically about it before rejecting him. Story 40. A friend of my father was only supposed to stay for about a week or two after experiencing hard times. That 2 weeks turned into 11 months, and he did not contribute a single penny towards rent or food. He constantly took over the kitchen and sitting room, chain-smoked shamelessly despite being told I am severely asthmatic, regularly got drunk, and kept us all up at night by drunkenly singing rebel songs and being loud and rowdy. At first, my father did nothing about it because he said it was his best friend. But honestly, my mother and I were ready to get rid of this unwanted guest. It reached the point where my mother gave my father an ultimatum. Either the unwanted guest leaves or they split up. My father got a wake-up call and decided to try to convince his friend to leave. That took a month, during which the unwanted guest got extremely drunk one night and blocked the only toilet in the house with both waste and vomit. This led to my father having to try to unblock the drains at 10:30 p.m. with his bare hands. An emergency plumber was then called, and the unwanted guest tried to avoid paying for it. That was the end for my father. The unwanted guest was screamed at to leave. I have not seen or heard from him since. That was about 4 or 5 years ago, before the lockdown began. Story 41. Helped herself to a brand new unopened box of Thin Mints. Ate every single one at least partially and then plopped the remainder in my toilet. But also managed to place the box back inconspicuously enough that I did not realize what happened until I went to grab myself a treat and started to investigate. I found this child sprawled out on the bathroom floor, sound asleep in an apparent sugar coma, and sucking on her thumb. In her defense, she was 2 years old and is my daughter. Story 42. Flooded my toilet and used all the toilet paper, including 3 rolls from under the sink, and my personal towel to soak it up. Kept turning off the oven while my sourdough bread was baking, ruining 2 loaves. Invited strangers over without asking and then got upset because I didn't have condoms for them. All of this happened on the same night. I am still upset with all of them. Story 43. My daughter's friend, who is 11 years old, cannot control her bowels. She soiled her pants and left them in a corner. The dog found the soiled pants, spread the mess on herself, then rolled around in my wife's and my bed, spreading the mess over our beautiful clean sheets. That child is now banned from the house. I do not know how I did not vomit. Story 44. My former best friend moved in with me from across the country, promising she had a job lined up. There was no job. She let her rabbit defecate all over the house. She wouldn't get a job and didn't pay rent on time. Although I was already settled in the home, she was immediately hostile when I refused to accommodate her demands for various changes. Things came to a head. She hadn't paid rent and was becoming increasingly unstable. We argued, and I gave her notice to leave. We had another fight, during which she accused me of intending to harm her rabbit and tried to force my dog out of the yard and into the alley. I called the police. When she returned, I denied her entry until the police arrived. She returned another day with her boyfriend to collect her belongings. In addition to owing me over $1,000, she also stole from me. I never recovered anything and was never repaid. I think it is unacceptable that she is allowed to have a Rover account and continues to scam those around her. However, she is out of my life now, and I have an amazing roommate. Story 45. Someone was arrested for treason in my house during the Civil War. Someone was also caught having an affair in my bedroom shortly after the Civil War. Story 46. When my mom came around, she was in an odd mood, which happens daily. The first thing she did was start insulting me and complaining about everything. I asked her politely to stop. Otherwise, she would have to leave. She pulled a face and stopped, only to start again after 5 minutes. I asked her to stop again. Otherwise, she had to leave. She said not after I printed something out for her. She continued to berate me for several minutes, so in the end, I asked her to leave. Otherwise, the police would be called. She laughed in my face and started swearing at me, which she did in front of my son, and smiled. In the end, I literally screamed, "You need to get out." She eventually left. She was only around for 45 minutes to 1 hour. She does this constantly, not just to me, but also to my sister. Story 47. The first time he stayed, he was so drunk he vomited in the spare room of our new home, where we had lived for 2 weeks. The second time, 4 years later, when I agreed the family could stay again, he stayed in the same room, which was my daughter's bedroom. We brought her into our bedroom to make room for them. He got drunk and urinated in almost the same spot. We have since moved house, and they are not invited to stay again. Story 48. I live in a flat in a house that is about 120 years old. 100 years ago, a young man murdered his parents in the flat in the basement. Story 49. A friend got too drunk, blacked out, and urinated on my coffee table. I made sure to put his face in it before cleaning it up. Story 50. Insulted me in my home. I tossed them out. They were not allowed back. My former spouse would let her in when I was at work. Story 51. My ex was an addict. Once, a friend of his stopped by for something, and my ex went upstairs for it, so I was awkwardly babysitting this stranger in my house. But my ex was taking forever, so I briefly went upstairs to tell him to hurry up. We had a mini argument. My ex insisted that I didn't need to babysit him, and I insisted that I did. 2 minutes later, I was coming back downstairs when I heard a loud crash. I got downstairs, and the friend was messing with his bag. I asked what the noise was, and he helpfully shrugged. I assumed my cats knocked something down that I would find momentarily. My ex finished up, and the friend left. That's when I realized that he stole my Super Nintendo. The crash was him knocking down my Nintendo 64. The most offensive part was that he only took half of my games. Like what? Zombies ate my neighbors isn't good enough for you? But yeah, don't date people in active addiction. Story 52. Other than me, I found a stranger passed out in my Lazaboy once. 3 a.m. it was potty time. I got up in the dark, flicked on the light, and suddenly sensed a presence. I thought I heard a noise or something, that feeling when you know you're not alone. Slowly, I turned and, illuminated by my bathroom light, saw a passed-out college student. I frisked him, woke him up, asked which apartment he was looking for, and led him to the correct door. He was lucky he didn't get shot. Story 53. Huh? Children, where do I start? Peed on the carpet, pooped on the floor, crayons in the dryer, holes in the wall numerous times, broken windows from balls, broke a glass coffee table, knocked over a 50-inch television, broken, pulled closet doors off their hinges, spilled milk on the couch and tried to keep it a secret until it smelled rancid, threw sandwiches behind the refrigerator until they became moldy and smelly, spilled nail polish on the wooden dining table and tried to clean it with nail polish remover, opened the barbecue cover, let it lean against the house, melting the siding, rammed into the garage door and knocked it off its rails. Story 54. Ooh, tough one. It's got to be one of these, which are in no particular order aside from how quickly I remember everything. This lady was talking nonsense, and I asked her to leave. On her way down the stairs, she just stopped, and I thought, what the heck? Then I heard the sound of her urine hitting the stairs and running down. Thank goodness we had just ripped up the carpeting to redo it. Someone came over to help clean while I was in the hospital. I got discharged and came home to her scrambling, grabbing her stuff to leave. I said, don't worry, I'll get you a ride for cleaning and cooking. She had like 5 to 7 bags minimum she left with in that ride. It turned out her stuff was the free shopping excursion she had in my room while shoving everything into the closet. Someone took the most disgusting bowel movement in a 5-gallon bucket with no toilet paper in the backyard and just left it. This girl and her boyfriend had been staying over sometimes. One day, I went into the bathroom to find blood smeared all over the toilet, a complete bloody handprint on the side facing the door, and a trail of blood leading up to the sink where she kindly left her used tampon. Someone thought we needed or wanted a full gallon of cow's blood. It remained in the fridge forever because I kept trying to get someone to own up to it and explain why. I only ever found out that you could purchase it from the butcher at the meat store. I found more than one instance of perfectly round bowel movements left unflushed without any toilet paper because I was on strike from buying it and kept a personal stash hidden just for myself once I became the only person contributing food, toiletries, cleaning supplies, and basically everything aside from their drugs. That one time, the shower and tub were used to make hash, and nobody ever cleaned out the buckets or bubble bags. They got nasty and moldy, rendering that whole aspect of the bathroom unusable. The house slowly became filled with stuff and cat and dog urine and feces room by room because only I would try to clean or let the animals out. I was getting sick and hospitalized quite often, only to come home and find it worse, even though I was promised cleaning was occurring. I literally had to have a junk removal service come in with hazmat suits as we pointed at basically everything to have it removed and tossed. It helped slightly for a bit, but stuff unfortunately began piling up again despite my best efforts. This was a place I thought and hoped would finally be somewhere I could manage my health and be happy, but it turned into a filthy flop and trap house that literally almost caused my death due to carbon monoxide poisoning and sabotage by hiding my insulin. The biggest mistake and regret of my life, but I am so happy I am out of that whole mess now. Story 55. My boyfriend let my little sister's ex live with us after they broke up again, and before they got back together again. This ruined my relationship with her, and he brought home bedbugs from someone's house, but tried to say they came from his job at a senior home. Story 56. They set a water bottle on my beautiful, perfect mid-century tall boy, leaving a permanent watermark. There were coasters all over the bedroom, but they failed to use them. Story 57. Knocked on the door at 40 below. I let them in and they proceeded to collapse. I called an ambulance. I don't think they made it. Really obnoxious of them. Story 58. Left a lit cigarette in my fridge and threw up red wine all over my bathroom. I do not know if any of it made it into the actual toilet. Second worst was the girl who threw up in my kitchen sink and tried to clean it with the sponge I used to wash dishes, then put it back. I am so glad I saw that and was able to throw it away. Needless to say, I no longer host events where alcohol is served. Story 59. Housemate did not launder his own clothes, so he borrowed my white shirt. He wore it for a week. I had to throw it away after that because the collar was blackened. He would not buy toilet paper, so he took mine from my bedroom. I started to sign the last few sheets of my toilet paper, but he still used it and tried to forge my signature. Absolute nuisance. Story 60. I invited a friend over for a movie when we wanted to hang out. We couldn't go to his house since he lived with his parents. He complained that I had a cat because he was allergic. He got upset that I only had Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, and water in the house and tried to get me to go to the store to buy him Coca-Cola. When I refused, he told me to pick some up for when he would come over next time. He ate all my food in the fridge, put dirty feet on my couch, and clipped his nails during the movie. When he left, he said my place was dirty and too small after I had deep cleaned it. It wasn't dirty. He only said that because I lived in a recreational vehicle at the time with my cat to save money while I went to college. He told me that I needed to upgrade my television and sound system because the only reason I didn't enjoy the movie was that I had a poor quality television. And yes, it was a poor quality television, but I didn't watch much television and had set it up just for our hangout. I was excited since he was my first guest in months. I nearly lost my temper at least 3 times, and I regret not doing so. Story 61. Mildred came over with no bandage on her open wound. She had cut her leg pretty badly a few days before. Her wound was leaking clear fluid and looked unpleasant, but it did not stop her from letting it leak all over my brand new carpet and couch. She made no attempt to clean it up or rebandage it. As soon as she left, I made a point to clean everything. That is only a small part of the reason I do not like her. Story 62. Someone lost control of his bowels and had about a quart of diarrhea all over the floor. That someone was me. Colonoscopy preparation is very unpleasant. Story 63. I had a party, and an old friend showed up. I didn't see him drink anything, and then suddenly he was as intoxicated as I have ever seen anyone. He was falling over himself with a 2-second memory. His boyfriend hauled him off and took him home. Then I noticed several other people were completely passed out, vomiting, or so out of it they couldn't even speak. I was terrified. Half the people at my house had overdosed, and the other half had no idea what was going on. It turns out it was gamma hydroxybutyrate, a dangerous depressant. Please do not come to my house and give my guests harmful substances. At the very least, tell me. Story 64. Long story, but I had one of my employees up for a promotion. So I invited her and her husband over for dinner. I made steaks. I went to the bathroom, and when I came back, he had thrown the steak against the window. I was not sure what his deal was. His wife made some excuses after he left, and I brushed it off with a laugh at the time. She did not get her promotion. Story 65. When my youngest was 2, he had been naughty, so I took him into his bedroom and told him he had to have a timeout for 5 minutes. I went into another room briefly, and when I came back, he had made a mess everywhere and spread it onto the carpet, as well as on his books and toys. We checked the video feed from the camera in his room, and he said quietly, "Daddy, I need to go to the bathroom." But he was so quiet and well-behaved that I had not heard him, and he stayed in there because it was a timeout. I felt awful, but my wife and I found the whole thing hilarious once we had cleaned up. The hardest part was getting the mess off the bottom of the door. Story 66. My house had some unusual vibes. We had a medium visit who told us we had a spirit. Many strange things had happened since we moved in. During a Halloween party, one of my friends and a guest she brought went into my basement and used a Ouija board. My ex-husband caught them and asked them to leave. Things escalated after that. It was a very disrespectful action. Story 67. At around 10 years old, I was hanging out with my friends who were aged 12, 10, and 8. The 12-year-old pulled my pants down in my living room. I never hung out with the 12-year-old again. Story 68. Stole from me right next to me and then denied it. Drugs are bad, children. They will make you do the worst thing in someone's house. Story 69. Not my current house, but the dorms I lived in at San Diego State University were rumored to be haunted. There were many wild stories about why, but the truth is that a man murdered a woman as people were leaving for Thanksgiving break, and no one found her until the following Monday. Some of my friends lived in the same suite where it happened. They did not like being there alone at night. Story 70. My girlfriend's mother was staying with us briefly. One of her one-night stands came over to pick her up. He used our toilet and urinated all over it without cleaning up. He did not understand why he was not allowed back in my apartment after that. Story 71. Back in 1999, they stole my Motorola two-way pager while I was pretending to help look for it. I was devastated when I found out. Story 72. Their daughter flushed a maxi pad and her underwear in our toilet, causing a backup in the entire house. It cost us $440 on Saturday night. Roto-Rooter arrived 5 hours later at 11:30 p.m. She also woke up early that same day, made coffee, and spilled it all over the kitchen and into the back patio. She was 12. Story 73. My elderly washing machine repair technician accidentally dropped feces from his pant leg onto my floor, then again on my welcome mat, and once more on the walkway. Story 74. Back in the late 1990s, I lived in my first apartment when I was 18. I let a man stay with us, and he ran up our phone bill with late-night sex line calls, totaling over $1,500. Then he disappeared and left that bill in my name. Story 75. He didn't shower for months and tried to manipulate me into saying he was showering every other day, even though I knew he was not. I was trying to give him a safe space to recover from something he experienced, but he rejected that, didn't pay for anything, and left his room smelling so filthy that everything had to be removed and destroyed. He was then kicked out and blocked, which was devastating but necessary. There is a lot to unpack there. Story 76. Oh, I have a fun one. When I got married, we saved money by having our reception in my parents' backyard. It was absolutely stunning. The biggest drawback was the lack of washrooms. There was one on the main floor, and we made the non-ensuite bathroom upstairs a guest bathroom. The locks on those doors were also ridiculous. They were small push-and-button locks about the size of a pencil eraser head, almost hidden underneath the door handle. Let's just say more than one person had the door opened on them. One of those people was my friend, who was interrupted by my mother-in-law while taking pictures. Story 77. My friend has a wife you cannot really trust in your house. She has stolen things before, such as a pack of cigarettes and a necklace, and one time vandalized a small wooden frog figurine in the bathroom. She is the type who will poke around your drawers. I just got a new house and have not invited them over. I tried to warn him about her. It is unfortunate. Story 78. As a teenager in the 1970s, I was dared to drink 4 beers, each in an open glass, one right after another. I was drunk, so I said okay, and I did it. In less than a minute, I was done. Then I felt like I was going to throw up in my friend's new house. They had white shag carpet on the main floor. I stumbled to the bathroom, but the door was locked. A girl's voice said she would be out in a minute. I didn't have a minute. I couldn't vomit on the carpet, so I reached down and grabbed some guy's cowboy boots, and I threw up in them. I felt much better. Then the girl came out of the bathroom, and I went in, rinsed my mouth, used some mouthwash, and went back to the party, feeling like I had just conquered a great challenge. I never did find out whose boots those were. My mistake. Story 79. This is nowhere near as bad as most examples, but I am almost 30 years past this happening and still upset about it. When my sister and I were little, I was about 7 and my sister 5. My mom invited a family over that had a son my sister's age. He also had a little brother who came along. We had a playroom in the basement that we were expected to keep generally tidy. A certain amount of play clutter was understandable, but every few days my parents would tell us to put it away. These 2 boys completely trashed the room. They were not even playing with items. They just grabbed one thing, dumped it on the floor, and moved on to the next. My sister and I did not know how to react, so after they ignored our requests to clean up, we quietly played with Barbies at a play table down there, which we had to pick up because they had flipped it over. My mom eventually heard the noise, came down, saw what was happening, and told the boys to stop dumping things and pick some up. Their mother insisted that they were just playing. To my mom's credit, she said they could either clean up some of the mess or leave. They chose to leave, were never invited over again, and our mothers pretty much hated each other afterward. My sister and I still had to clean everything up, and we found they had broken some things. This sticks with me because of the complete lack of respect for someone else's toys. My parents could be strict at times, but I always appreciated that they taught us from a young age to respect our belongings and even more to respect others' belongings. Story 80. Threw a ball for the dog over the back of the couch while I had my seed bead organizer open. It is a massive sectional, and I was at one end while he was at the other. This has happened before, and he knows the dog will run over me to jump from the back of my side, rather than jump down from the side they are on. Over a week's worth of newly finished sorting was literally up in the air. They flew several feet. This happened a few minutes ago. Story 81. I threw a large party at my parents' house when I was in my early 20s. Nothing was broken, but there was a mess to clean up. However, one very odd thing stood out to me. There was a frozen pie in the freezer. In their assumed intoxicated state, someone took it out of the freezer, ate the crust, and put it back. What? Story 82. 1. Stole from me. Pooped on my floor. My friend stole multiple toys from me during 5th and 6th grade. My mom used to run a daycare, and one of the children was potty training, so he was walking around without clothes as part of the method. He defecated on our floor. Story 83. An associate of mine had sexual intercourse with my then-wife while I was out of the state working very hard, in front of our daughter. Story 84. My sister vomited in the shower and did not bother to clean it, only turning on the water for 5 seconds. She had been eating black olives. Later, I turned on the shower and it nearly overflowed. I had to scoop all the olives out and then clean the tub. I have not touched an olive since. That was back in the mid-1990s. Story 85. My niece brought her boyfriend to our house while she was house-sitting for us over the long weekend. When we came home, I suspected that there had been more than one person in the house. While showering that night, I grabbed my razor and noticed long pubic hairs on it that did not match the hair color of my wife, myself, or my niece. It is unacceptable for someone to visit a house and use someone else's razor without permission. Story 86. They were together on my favorite, expensive bed sheets, and the woman left a small stain on the pillow that she presumably used to prop her waist up during sex. I had been on a hike and returned home to a bedroom that smelled strongly of sweat, sex fluids, and body odor. I had a wonderful talk with my housemate when I found her in the backyard, sipping wine in her post-sex bliss, video chatting with her friend about the amazing experience she just had with her new boyfriend. Story 87. Not me, but a friend of mine. A group of intoxicated men stayed over so that no one would drive under the influence. He watched as one of them woke up, went over to a chair, lifted the cushion, urinated, and then put the cushion down. Story 88. A friend and former coworker came over for a get-together, got drunk, and went to sleep in the guest room. About an hour later, I walked by the room and smelled something unpleasant. In a drunken state, she decided to use my walk-in closet and sprayed diarrhea all over the closet, a jewelry box, and down her leg. It was foul. My ex and I put on gloves and cleaned it all while trying not to vomit, as she was peacefully passed out. This was the last time she stayed over. Story 89. A friend sat in my cat's spot once. Now every time he goes to sit there, he sniffs it first as if he is checking for betrayal. Story 90. My cousin was house-sitting for me while I was on my honeymoon. He slept with a friend of mine in my bed while I was gone and did not bother to change the sheets or make the bed. That was unpleasant to come home to. Story 91. A female neighbor urinated on my sofa without saying anything. She sat there and urinated while talking to us. We did not realize until she stood up. She was wearing red jeans, and the crotch area was completely wet, as was the sofa. She smiled and said goodbye. I immediately got gloves and disinfectant as soon as I closed the door. It was very disrespectful not to say anything. Story 92. Former best friend absolutely ate me out of house and home because she was having relationship issues. In her late 30s. Also ate an entire box of expensive holiday chocolates that I hadn't even opened. Made cake balls and somehow coated everything in my kitchen, including the floor, in a fine mist of cooking spray. Put the mixing bowls on the floor afterwards so my dogs could lick them. Another friend cleans even when I say not to because she cannot stand anything that isn't the bare minimum. She just clears things for the sole purpose of having them cleared. I find random items stuffed into strange places for months after she has been here. Over-the-counter medications in the dish rack. Knickknacks given to me by family members stuffed into the candy bowl along with my dog's leash. Catnip placed carefully on the TV stand shelf next to my Lord of the Rings and Star Wars collections. But at least all the tables and counters were completely bare. I do not have her over anymore. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.